Hello, I'm William Michael of the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, and this past year I decided to uh, follow what I consider to be a vocation to the life of a lay Dominican. And recently, in a tutoring session, one of my students asked me, what does that mean? What does it mean to be a lay Dominican? And I spent some time talking to him about that, but I thought it would be helpful. Maybe other students would be interested in knowing what it means for me to become a lay Dominican and how I came to that decision and what that means for my life every day. So I'd like to explain a little bit about the meaning and my vocation as a lay Dominican. Ever since I was 19 years old or so, I've known that I wanted to devote my life to serve God in the best way possible. The problem is that I didn't know what it meant to serve God in the best way possible. And even from that time, when I was 19 years old or so, I started to pray and seek to find the answer to that question, how I can serve God in the best way possible. And when you consider that that started for me when I was 19 years old, and really it's continued for me until I am now 47 years old. So, what is that? 28 years. 28 years I've been praying and studying and working to really find out what it means to serve God in the best way possible in my own unique life, in my own circumstances, with my own gifts and strengths and weaknesses and interests and so on. And at the time when I was younger, I was not a Catholic. I was a Protestant, and what most people around me encouraged me to do was to become a minister. And so I got to a point when I was ready to enter into an Episcopalian seminary and become a minister, when I had sort of the last thoughts as a Protestant before I became a Catholic. I didn't want to be an Episcopalian minister. I didn't want to be a Protestant. I knew that I needed to be in union with the Pope and with the bishops of the church that could claim apostolic succession. And so at that time in my life, I guess I was about 27 years old or so, 29 years old actually. I decided to join the Catholic Church. That was around 2004. And the reason why I had chosen to study classics in college was because I wanted to devote myself to Christian work, to biblical studies, to Christian historical studies, and I felt that the best preparation for that life would be through classical studies. And so I switched my college program from pre-medicine to classical studies in ancient history, and then when I finished school, actually while I was still in school, I was influenced by a couple of my professors who took interest in me and became friends to me, offered to become friends to me, and invited me to their homes to talk about life and helped me to think about my future. And they encouraged me to go into education, which I never even thought of until then. But they knew that I wanted to have an influential life. They knew I wanted to do important work, and they encouraged me in that direction. And as time went on, I found that it was true, that I really did find satisfaction in work in education. But I didn't want to be a college professor. I didn't want to work at that level. I wanted to work with children because I thought about how my own education lacked so many things. And I said, I want to go back. I want to work with younger children, and I want to help bring those things to younger children. And so I began pursuing work in education, and I was still a Protestant at the time. And then eventually, when I chose to become a Catholic, I had to give up a job that I had as a classics teacher. And that eventually led me in 2008 to start the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, about 2 years after or 3 years after I became a Catholic. But I still wasn't satisfied. I knew that the Classical Liberal Arts Academy was important work, and I knew that it had a lot of potential to do good, but I still didn't feel like I was where I needed to be. And it was around that time, around 2008, when I learned about the Third Order of St. Dominic. And what attracted me to the Third Order was really funny story. My children had some children's saint biographies that they used to read, and they were written by a woman, and my wife and I enjoyed these little saint books the kids had, and when we looked at the author, we saw that she was a Third Order Dominican, and we had no idea what that meant, and so we looked it up, and as I looked it up, I said, that's really interesting. So she's a member of the Dominican order, but she's a lay person. That's weird. I didn't even know that was possible. How can you be a member of a religious order if you're a lay person? And so at that time in 2008, I started to look into it, and I found out that there was a chapter of the Third Order of St. Dominic, the same religious community that this woman was a member of, who wrote these saint books. And so I got in touch with them and told them that I was interested in learning more, and they gave me lots of information, and I had some great conversations with them. But their location was 3.5 hours away, and there was just no way that would be possible for me to travel 3.5 hours to meetings once a month. So I just got back to work and thought that was not going to be possible because it was just too much traveling. I couldn't possibly do it. And so several years later, really this past year, I guess 2020, all of a sudden, I learned that there was a Third Order Dominican chapter in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is only 40 minutes away. And so I was very excited. I hadn't thought about that in a long time, but I was still unhappy. Not really unhappy, but I just felt like I was not satisfied with what I was doing, and there were lots of signs that I had a vocation to do something, but I really couldn't put my finger on it. I pray the Liturgy of the Hours. I love the Rosary. I love going to Mass. I love teaching and even preaching the Catholic faith. I don't think that I'm a normal Catholic in the sense that I have desires to do things that many other Catholics don't have interest in or don't think about. So I thought that there might be something more, and I even attended a few different religious community meetings. I went and visited the Benedictines out at Clear Creek Abbey, spent 2 weeks with them actually, talking about things, and while I loved their community and enjoyed my time with them, I didn't feel like that was my calling. I also spent some time meeting with secular Franciscans, which is another religious community for lay people, but I didn't feel like that was really what I had an interest in. And when I look at my life and my work, I'm a classicist. I study and teach the classical liberal arts. I spend my time studying and teaching the writings of St. Thomas Aquinas and Albert the Great, and my favorite authors are Dominicans, and I have a Dominican spirit in the way that I live the Catholic life, and I remained interested in learning more about this Third Order of St. Dominic. And so when I found out that there was a chapter that had been started in Charlotte. I began attending the meetings, and the meetings, there's a monthly meeting for the chapter, and we get together. We have assigned studies each week, readings to do, and then we get together and we talk about those readings. And I just found the readings to be so wonderful and helpful. And the meetings were so friendly and encouraging. The relationships I developed with other people there were just so good and helpful to me that I knew that this really was something that I needed and wanted. I wanted to become a lay Dominican. And so this past year, I attended all of the formation meetings once a month and did all the studies. And I asked my pastor, my priest, for permission to pursue this. And he encouraged me to do it and gave me a letter of recommendation. The deacon at our church also gave me a recommendation. And my own mother gave me a recommendation, which was kind of cool to be recommended to a religious community by your mother. And so I had all the requirements, and everything went well. I had a great time at all the meetings, and the readings were so helpful and so good that it really confirmed for me that this was my desire. And then a month ago or so, I had interviews with the leaders of the chapter of the lay Dominicans, and I was received and welcomed to join the lay Dominicans. So after all these years of searching, I think by the grace of God, I finally found what I was looking for, and it was a vocation to the Third Order of St. Dominic, which is also called the lay Dominicans. Now, like I said, a student the other night asked, what does it mean? What does it really mean to be a lay Dominican? Well, the Dominican order was founded by St. Dominic in the 1200s, so over 800 years ago. St. Dominic founded an order that was eventually named after him. He didn't name it after himself. He called it the Order of Preachers. The Order of Preachers. And it was important because it was a group of priests and monks who were going to commit to work to preach the Catholic faith in the 1200s. And there were a number of enemies of the Catholic Church at the time who were speaking against the Catholic Church, and St. Dominic and his companions formed a religious community and would devote themselves to prayer, to study, and to preaching the Catholic faith. It's important to note this idea of an order of preachers was a unique idea, because in the ancient church, the only people who preached were bishops. Even priests weren't really considered preachers. The teachers of the faith were the bishops. If you look back into the writings of the church fathers, you'll see that all the people who taught catechetical lessons and wrote and preached, they were all bishops. St. Augustine, St. Ambrose, and so on. It wasn't common for anyone else to preach or speak publicly in the name of the Catholic faith. And so the order of preachers was established and approved by the church, and St. Dominic and his companions were committed to studying and preaching the Catholic faith, and they were called the Order of Preachers. So that's how the order started, but then St. Dominic also wanted to have women join their community, and so the first order of the community was the priests and the monks. They were the first order, and then the second order, or the second rank of the community, were nuns. And so there was a female division of the community, and then St. Dominic also wanted there to be an opportunity for lay people to minister and to fulfill a vocation of preaching the Catholic faith. And so 3 different orders or ranks were established. The first order of priests and monks, the second order of nuns, and the third order of lay people. One of the most famous Dominicans was a lay person, St. Catherine of Siena. She was a lay woman who was a famous Dominican, but she was a lay Dominican. St. Martin de Porres was also a lay Dominican. St. Rose of Lima was also, I believe, a lay Dominican. But anyway, so there were three orders. One was priests and monks, one was nuns, and one was for the lay people. So when I say that I've joined the third order of St. Dominic, that's clear now, and it's also referred to as lay Dominicans. So I decided to become a member of the third order of St. Dominic, or the lay Dominicans, and by God's grace I was welcomed into the order by its members. So as of this September, I am going to be a lay Dominican and begin my second year of formation. The first year is called the Inquirer's Year. It's really where you just learn about the Dominican order and what the Dominican order does and what they believe and teach and practice. And then once you're through that first year, you can decide whether you'd like to pursue membership in the Third Order of St. Dominic, and then you begin more formation in your first year as a member of the community. So this September, I'll be received into the Third Order of St. Dominic, and I'll begin my first year of formation actually as a member of the Third Order of St. Dominic. Now, what does it mean to be a Dominican? This has been the purpose of all of these studies this past year, to learn what it means to be a member of the Third Order of St. Dominic. And in the Dominican order, there are four basic, they're called pillars. There are four basic principles of the life of a Dominican. And as I go through these, you're going to see how clearly they match up with my life. The first is prayer, and as you know, I've promoted and practiced praying the Liturgy of the Hours ever since I started the Classical Liberal Arts Academy. I was praying daily prayers even before I became a Catholic, because as an Episcopalian, they have morning and evening prayer. So I was doing that before I was even a Catholic. And when I became a Catholic, I learned about Liturgy of the Hours, and I've promoted the Liturgy of the Hours ever since. So prayer is the first pillar of the Dominican life, and that also includes the Rosary, attending daily Mass, and so on. The second is study. Dominican vocation is a vocation to study, to pursue the knowledge of God and of God's works, which is wisdom, and to share that wisdom, to share that contemplation with others. So prayer is the first pillar, study is another pillar, apostolate work is the third pillar, that we don't merely study and pray, but we do so in order to preach. And so there needs to be some active ministry or service that a Dominican performs. And for me, the apostolate is very obvious. It's the Classical Liberal Arts Academy. That is my apostolate as a lay Dominican. So that part was always clear. That's the third part. And then the fourth part is community, becoming a member of the Dominican family and participating in the life of the community, attending community meetings, praying for other members of the community, and doing other things that relate to community life. So those four things are the four pillars of life as a lay Dominican: prayer, study, an apostolate work, and community. So you can see how, as I learned about those things, their relation to my life just seemed like such a perfect fit. I already prayed most of the prayers that are required by the Dominican life. I already studied Dominican subjects. I study sacred scripture, the writings of St. Thomas, classical studies. I already do study. I already have an apostolate. I already am working to preach and teach the Catholic faith in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, and by God's grace, even when I started the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, I was given permission to do so by the bishop. So I've always been able to work with a good conscience, knowing that I'm not doing anything without permission from the church, which for me is very important. And then fourthly, the one thing that I was lacking was community, was the relationship with other members of the Dominican family, which I now have as a member of the lay Dominicans. So it was a very clear fit for me as I went through the formation. And now that I've chosen to join the lay Dominicans, now I face the challenge of actually living the life of a lay Dominican, because it's very challenging. I think it's actually underestimated how difficult it is. And so to become or to live as a lay Dominican, I've got to do a number of things, and they're challenging. It's quite a load to bear day by day. First of all, I've got to pray morning and evening prayer of the Liturgy of the Hours every day. So praying morning and evening prayer, which I've always done, but I've never been required to do it in any serious way. I've never made a promise to do it or anything like that. I've just done it out of my own desire, and there are times when I don't do it. There are days where I go without it. But now as a Dominican, I have to commit more seriously to that, because it's actually part of my life now as a Dominican, part of my duty as a Dominican. And so I've got to pray morning and evening prayer every day. I've got to say a rosary every day. The rosary was originally given by the Virgin Mary to St. Dominic, and it's a central part of the Dominican life to pray the rosary daily and meditate on the mysteries of the rosary. So I've got to add to morning and evening prayer, I've got to add a daily rosary. And that doesn't sound like much, but when you're busy with an apostolate work like I have to manage, the consistency of daily prayers is a real challenge. So it's a challenge for me that I'm actually happy for it. The challenge and the accountability actually helps me to do it. So I've got to pray morning and evening prayer, and I've got to pray the rosary every day. I also am urged by the Dominican life to attend Mass daily. And again, thanks be to God, I'm able to do that because I'm self-employed. So I can adjust my schedule so that I can go to daily Mass. And fortunately, here at the office, our parish is just 1 mile down the road. So if you look at my schedule, you'll see that my office schedule starts at 10 in the morning, and that's because Mass at our parish is at 9 in the morning. So I'm able to attend daily Mass, which is another part of the life of a lay Dominican. So praying morning and evening prayer, praying the rosary daily, attending daily Mass. I've got to go to confession once a month. So more frequent confession is required, which again is not a problem since my parish is right down the road, and I have a priest who's very generous with time that he makes available for confession. This is actually the biggest challenge for me. Just because of my work and being busy, I've never made confession that frequently, so that's one area where I've got to get used to making monthly confession. So that's one of the challenges that I'm going to have to face as a Dominican, to make monthly confession. In addition to that, I've got to fast on the vigils of the feast days of certain Dominican saints. I've got to assist with some of the spiritual activities of the Dominican community, like attending funerals of other members of the community, praying for the members of the community, and so on, participating in masses for the Dominican community. So there's this list of requirements that I've got to now work to fulfill, which is challenging to me and is very encouraging at the same time, because it's the source of my fellowship and community life with all the other Dominicans that are members of the Dominican order. So it's a challenging life. It's a call to live with standards of prayer and devotion and penitential works that go beyond the precepts of the church. It's voluntary. It's It's done with approval from the church, and so it's a way to pursue a more perfect path according to my own interests and abilities, and this way that has been marked out for us in the Catholic Church according to the way of Saint Dominic. So that's what it means to be a lay Dominican. It won't affect my work much in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy because I was already doing work that is very Dominican in its nature. So the real challenge of this commitment for me is just in the daily commitment to prayers and attending Mass, to making more frequent confessions, making sure I pray the Rosary every day. It's these challenges in the midst of what's a busy life that I have in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, doing the work that has to be done every day, being able to discipline myself, to make these spiritual disciplines my priority every day and make sure that these things get done in the midst of all of the other work that needs to be done. It's a healthy challenge for me to have. And another reason why I can be thankful is because my wife, Mrs. Michael, she went through this formation with me, and she was also received into the community. So not only do I get to pursue this Dominican life, but I get to do it with my wife, who I've been with, the only woman I've ever been with since I was 17 years old. So after all these years of our relationship together, we get to be Dominicans together, which is pretty cool. So that's what it means for me to become a lay Dominican. That's how I was led to make this decision through the years. I've always said that if I had the knowledge of religious life when I was 18, I would have chosen it. And I really mean that sincerely. I was married before I was even a Catholic, and even before I was married, I was interested in religious studies and work, and I was interested in going to seminary. I was interested in missionary work and evangelization. I used to like to walk the streets at night when I was in college and spend time with the homeless people because I actually felt comfortable with the poor. And I always knew that there was something weird about me, but I never understood what it was. And then after I became Catholic and established my life's work and things, 29 or so years later, I see all of these interests and all of these different abilities and desires fulfilled in the life of a lay Dominican. So that's how I got here. That's how I made the decision. That's what it means for me to be a lay Dominican, and I'm very excited about the resources that I now have to study as a member of the Dominican community. The things we do for formation, they're very helpful for my work as a teacher, and so I'm looking forward to engaging in all these studies, challenging myself in prayer and in my own spiritual disciplines, and I trust that that's going to bring lots of benefits to the work that I do in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy. So if you're interested in learning more about the Dominicans, you can go to their website. It's op.org, very simple to remember. OP stands for Order of Preachers, or in Latin, Ordo Predicatorum. op.org is the Dominican website. If you Google Charlotte Lay Dominicans, you can learn about the group that I'm actually a member of, a chapter here in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is pretty wonderful. We actually meet at a parish called St. Thomas Aquinas Church, which is great, and we have meetings also at the new seminary here in Charlotte, which is beautiful, St. Joseph's Seminary. So it's been a real blessing to go through the formation process, to have this new community that I didn't have before, and to be able to bring all of this knowledge and all of these graces available to me now and set them at the service of all of the parents and students in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy. I'm very thankful for the opportunity to do that. So that's what it means to be a lay Dominican. If you have any questions about about becoming a lay Dominican or about other third order communities that exist in the church, because there are quite a bunch of them. All the major religious orders have third orders. The Franciscans have third orders, the Carmelites, the Benedictines. There are third order communities in most of the major religious orders. And you can see that each one has a different charism. It's called a different focus, a different type of work, a different grace that characterizes the different religious community. And that's how you go about discerning whether something like this might be of interest to you. But if you're a student and you're interested in religious life, realize that the first and second orders, like I described before, to be a priest or a monk or a nun and devote your whole life to study and prayer and the work of a Catholic apostolate and the benefits and responsibilities of community life. That's a life you can choose and devote your whole life to. So whether you're a lay person or not, you can consider religious vocations. If you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with me or ask me about them when we have tutoring meetings, or you can just send me an email or whatever, or you can go online and just look them up. Look up lay Dominicans, look up the website op.org, the Order of Preachers, learn more about St. Dominic and all the saints who are Dominicans, St. Albert the Great, St. Thomas, St. Catherine of Siena, on and on, all through church history. That's what it means to be a lay Dominican, but you can also be a religious Dominican. So I hope that's helpful. That's what it means if you're curious, and that's how I got here as a Catholic teacher after 28 years or so of having a sense that there was something that God was leading me to do and not understanding what it was until it all came together in 2020 and through this past year. So I hope that's helpful. God bless.